We have nobody zooming, right? No, sir. This time I'd like to call the Nash County Board of Education order committee meetings. Mr. Dunn is not here. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Administrative Services and Operations Committee. Motion by Franklin Lamb, second by Chris Vincent. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed likewise. This time I'm gonna make a motion to approve the meeting minutes. Here comes Mr. Dunn. Do I have a second? Motion by me, second by Chris Vincent. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed likewise, motion carried. Mr. Dunn, we went ahead and started with the focus group now. I'd like to turn it over to Angie Miller or Mr. Davis.
I think Mr. Davis is going to start.
Okay. I guess I am.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to come and update you again on the school project down in the southern part of the county. Did this about a month ago, and what's happened in that last month, quite a bit has gone on, quite frankly. On January the 3rd, we had a meeting over at the engineer's office, which was Stocks Engineering here in Nashville, who is the engineering firm that the school system keeps. I guess you call it Dr. Ellis on retainer kind of sort of. If you need a little bit of help along the way, that's who you use. Prior to entering into a negotiation to purchase this land, we all felt it would certainly be necessary to have a civil engineer to look at it, make sure what we wanted to build would fit on the piece of land that we were looking at, and make sure the layout would work, and just make sure that we done all the due diligence we needed to do to know for sure that this project would fit on a piece of land that y'all have picked as your #1 site. We're in the process of doing that. That meeting went well. The school system had him to do a very preliminary layout, which they did, and played with it quite a bit and got it like basically the school administrative staff wanted it to be at that point in time. And of course, this is all preliminary, and y'all will move into your next phase after we get land purchased in employing an architect to do plans. You got a whole process to do through that. In that process, you will be including a civil engineer, which will be selected the way it normally works by the architect. Doesn't have to be that way, but that's what y'all have done in the past, to not have separate contracts for site work and separate contracts for building. That sometimes gets messy and get all these things that one didn't cover and the other one thought that would cover it. So it's best to just put it under one regime. But I'm not telling y'all what to do. That's just a normal process. So the engineer you employ to do this layout may and well not be the one that does the civil engineering on the project moving forward, is my point. That meeting went well, and then on January the 9th, I met over at Mike Stocks' office with our county engineer, Jonathan Boone, and also Kim Moore, who is the division engineer for DOT. The purpose of that meeting was to get her to look at the preliminary layout, make sure the DOT was going to be okay with the access to the school the way it needed to be on the tract of land that y'all were looking at. And all of this is due diligence, just to make sure this property is going to work. We had a great meeting. She wanted to go back and talk to some of her people because they've got another division. I believe that division actually works out of Winston-Salem that looks at all school sites and to see how the access works. And of course, what they're looking at primarily, particularly in a middle school and an elementary school, is stacking room, and just make sure you got room to get everybody off of DOT right away. Y'all spent a lot of money over the last 10, 15 years going back and doing that on schools. We didn't have that because it's just a trend now that, as y'all know much better than I do, a lot of parents bring the kids to school and drop them off and then go pick them up in the afternoon. we heard back from her a little while later, a few days, and indeed, she was fine with it. Her people were fine with it, and actually liked the way it, worked out, so we passed that hurdle. And then on January the 16th, the Focus Committee, met, and I believe that was our third or fourth meeting, Dr. Ellis, I'm not sure, it was either 3 or 4, as you may know. But anyway, we met, here, and, at that particular meeting, Franklin was there, and, Dean was there. And I believe, Dr. Chavis is the other one on that committee. She wasn't present at that particular meeting. But again, we looked at it. I gave, the Focus Committee an update on what we found out for DOT and how things were going. And basically, that committee, and I will let Franklin address that rather than me, but signed off on all we had found out. They wanted to move forward with getting it to the full committee like you are here tonight. And then hopefully, at your next meeting, y'all would get in a position where you can move forward in entering into a purchase agreement. Now, the land we have found out, since, the last time I spoke to you, is going to need to be purchased by the county. So we will actually be purchasing the land, whether it's this piece of land or whatever y'all choose to do, because we are going to use the, property itself, for the purchase of the property that we'll be doing. We'll be borrowing the funds to do that with. It's going to be in a big finance package that the county's going to do on a lot of capital improvement projects coming up. We were able to find out, even though it wasn't the answer we got to start with, but we will be able to use our match money to purchase the land with. So because we did more than a minimum match of 5%, the county chose to use 10%. If we'd only used 5, we couldn't have used match money, and that's what many other counties have faced in the past. But because we doubled the match, they have told us we could use the part above the minimum match to purchase land with. So that's what we'll be doing with the fund coming from the county. So it is the intent now, and I don't think y'all would care one way or the other. We've done this many times in the past. It will stay in the county's name until such time as the debt's paid off, and then, of course, the property will revert back to the school board. But that's pretty much where we are at. Just to move forward, I kind of think we need to be focused, like Dallas, and the focus group should be concentrated on, as quick as we can, formulate the process by which you're going to employ the architect and start that process, because we're on a pretty short timeline to deliver this school, as we all know. And it's, when we buy the land, it's going to be about 33.38 acres is what we've identified that we need at that particular place. The layout of it looks very good. There's parking for 204 cars. There are, in the sports aspect, which I know many of you are interested in, there'll be a baseball field, softball field, 6 tennis courts, soccer / multi-purpose field, and a football field. And that's the list that we were given that needed to fit on a piece of property, which we have assured it will fit on a piece of property. It's 204 parks. It has bus parking for 15, and this again is a preliminary layout. And the total queuing that we have room for is 1,730 linear feet, which is double what the DOT would require us to do. So I just really have all good news on this site as far as it working in the layout of it. What we hope to do is just looking at a preliminary timeline to be able to fit the window by which the grant has to be completed in is sometime in February, to be able to move forward with start the process to select the architect. We hope to have that done and turn it loose in May for them to start, whoever y'all choose, to start the design process. And then we hope to be able to put it out to bid in November and receive bids hopefully in December or early January, and be able to have construction to start somewhere in the January, February range of 2026. And that if it's, of course, January is 26, if it's December is 25. But anyway, that should put us on a course to be able to complete the project within the time frame called for in the grant. Dr. Ellis, what have I forgot that I need to cover? I'll be glad to answer any questions if you do that at these meetings.
So, yeah, anyone ask questions, I'm just gonna let the board know that I sent the, kind of like a snapshot of the map on Friday in the weekly calendar, so you'll have a copy of everything that Mr. Davis has right now, and he's given us. And I think now we would decide if the county could now start the process of negotiating and purchasing this land. So I think that's what we need to talk about today. So if you have any questions, Mr. Davis.
Be glad to try to answer them.
Mr. Davis, I'd like to thank you for what you've done because you have saved us and the taxpayers quite a bit of money by being able to use the above money.
Well, they're our taxpayers also, so I'm glad to save them. County's taxpayers too, so we're glad to save them.
But you've done a lot of legwork that I would not know how to do, and I'm sure the focus group would not know how to do also.
Well, pleased to do it. That's just part of what I've raised my hand for. And it worked so well for us to work together at Red Oak. I'm just excited to get in on the front end of this one, and y'all got to make decisions. We just gonna try to put the facts out there for you.
But it's always best to have your sources included in the business
Source of
also,
funding.
because you are the funding
That's
source.
true. That's true. Anything else, anybody?
So this would be information, board, that, you know, if you all could decide if you want them to move forward, we can make that an action item on the next board meeting.
I think we need-
Monday, and go ahead and move this forward.
I think we need to make it an action item Monday. Anybody disagree?
Thank you.
Ms. Miller, Soccer Like, Southern Ash High School.
Good evening. So I am sharing with you in our minutes for board approval in reference to our soccer field lights. We did a bid process, so the bid tab was included. This was legislation funding, a grant that we received to $200,000. The bids in previous opportunities came in over bid. We do have one within that bid total, so we would like to move forward with this with Musco Lighting for the soccer lights at Southern Nash High School. With that legislation, it did come in specifically for that school and for this sport and for that location. And to meet the timeline with board approval, they are looking to get this implemented by the summer and be in place and usable by August.
I will entertain a motion to approve the soccer lights.
I move that we recommend this to the board for approval.
Motion by Mr. Dunton. I have a second. I'll second it. I'm on it, second. Motion by Mr. Dunton, second by me. All in favor say aye. All opposed likewise, motion carried. Thank you. Nash Central Middle School and Southern Nash Middle School roof replacement bid, Ms. Miller.
Yes, sir. I'm sharing with you in that bid tab also the next item for an action item for approval for the superintendent is for the Nash Central Middle and Southern Nash Middle roof replacement. I did share that with you in the presentation last month. I want to say last month, and it's capital outlay money, and that was part of our capital projects. And it is the recommendation is for the B&M roofing contractors to receive that bid. And I gave you the list included.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to recommend to the board for approval.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Blank Dunn, second by Zach Gray. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed likewise, motion carried. Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any other comments for Administrative Services Operations Committee? I will adjourn this committee. We will go to the Policy Committee. Mr. Dunton.
Thank you, Franklin. Mr. Chairman, I guess at this point, we'll ask Mr. Weber to come forward. Before we do that, as I often miss it, included in your packet was the minutes from our last meeting. If y'all have had a chance to take a minute to look at those, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Thank you, Dr. Washington. A second. Mr. Gray, any discussion around the minutes, changes or other? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Weber, floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Policy committee members, we just have two policies to discuss this evening. The first is 4210, release of students from school. The second is, I believe, 2110, your board member elections policy. I'll start with 4210. And just for some background on this, these are not standard NCSBA policy updates. So this is a special custom policy revision that I've been working on with Dr. Ellis specific to release time programs. The board has had a couple of presentations from one particular program, Likewise. I do want to clarify at the outset, this proposed policy revision is not specific to Likewise. It's not specific to any particular release time program or organization. These changes are intended to be something that could be put in effect for any particular program at any school for any student who chooses to participate. I believe maybe at some point in the fall, there was discussion around this and whether the board would need to take any kind of particular policy action to authorize students to be released from school to participate in these types of voluntary religious programs. And this policy was drafted with that discussion in mind. As you can see from the policy, I'm happy to read it, happy to review it. I don't want to insult your intelligence and read it to you. But again, this was drafted in collaboration with Dr. Ellis and also based on some similar policies from school districts and boards in South Carolina, where there's actually been a bit of litigation around this area. So I made sure to kind of learn from what they had learned and craft it in a way that is similar to policies that have been upheld. As you can see, the introductory section just basically establishes some definitions and the purpose of the proposed revisions. You can see in that language, we really tried to make it very clear that release time programs such as this can be organized by any religion or religious tradition, faith tradition, or denomination. What we've done is set this up such that it authorizes sort of a blanket approval for absences when students choose, again, voluntarily to participate in one of these programs. And then you'll see numbers 1 through 10 and 11, these would be proposed parameters around the absences and the particular requirements that students and organizations would need to meet in order to participate. And that includes a signed parent consent form. The intent there is really just to get kind of a standardized process around it, so it's not something that differs from school to school. The second particular requirement here, that's actually something that I pulled from similar policies in South Carolina and some that have also been upheld in the state of New York. The purpose of that is not to, if any particular involvement in the program itself, is just to ensure that students who are participating, are actually doing this and not, for example, like going to the movies or going to the arcade or something like that. The next few paragraphs here, provisions, really just have to do with basic program requirements and liability. For those board members who are new, there was some discussion of this maybe in September or October. And really for these types of programs to be authorized, it needs to be 100% voluntary with very little to no school or district participation in the program, administrative entanglement, and no funding. So really those next couple of provisions get to that point when it comes to transportation, responsibility for injuries during transportation. That gets us down through number 6. Number 7, this is really, something that Dr. Ellis and I were kicking around, whether, the board would want to put any kind of parameters around the frequency This is something that I believe is consistent with a few similar policies in the state of Ohio, where they also have similar programs such as this. The limitation there of one class period per month. Part of the consideration on the administration side, having for Dr. Ellis to weigh in, is just around, balancing, authorizing this type of release with, ensuring that students are also attending class and, making progress in whatever particular elective they choose to be absent from for participation purposes. Number 8 here is also designed to put some measures to ensure there's not, students who are missing kind of your core subject courses, which, we tried to come up with a definition that clarifies what that means, to ensure that students aren't missing classes, whether it's an EOG or EOC or other assessment that's required by the State Board of Ed. Number 9 is also intended to maintain that balance, right, between authorizing this as something that's voluntary for students while ensuring they're not falling behind on their schoolwork. Numbers 10 and 11, these are drafted as options. This is something I'm happy for Dr. Ellis to weigh in, where it's really at the board's discretion whether you would want to include any kind of mechanism for essentially removing authorization for a particular student who may be falling behind, where that particular release time could be better used to assist with a student's progress in school. The first option is really similar to your extracurricular activities policy. That policy puts parameters around participation in sports, for example, or after-school clubs, and this language is intended to be similar, where participation could be restricted based on a number of factors, including academic progress under your policy 5400, or there are attendance issues, or a student has violated the code of conduct for the district or for the school. It's really fairly expansive in that regard, but also again, similar to your extracurricular activities policy. And then option 2 is a little more targeted and narrow, where instead of getting into issues around attendance and conduct, which I understand some of these programs, they're kind of themselves as being designed to address those particular issues. That second option would be more limited to students who are identified as at risk of academic failure. And if you scroll a little further down, these are really just statements that are intended to make it clear that these are wholly voluntary programs with no expenditure of public funds to participate or support any particular program, and also establishes rules around school employee participation, stating that students or school employees can't promote or participate in the provision of religious instruction or encourage or discourage participation. And then that last statement, again, is just intended to make it very clear this is not specific to any particular program, any particular religion or school. So I'm happy to take any feedback. Dr. Ellis, if you have
So
anything
we
you wanna
just,
add?
Jason had sent us the document of what other school districts did. Me, Dr. Farrell, and Ms. Nancy Smith kind of started putting parameters, because we wouldn't be responsible for parents signing a kid up, transportation, where they meet. But we wanted to make sure we put a few academic attendance parameters around, a kid couldn't miss certain classes, core classes. If they're not doing well in school, there's no need for them to miss school for the program. And I think what you're gonna have to figure out is, option 1 or 2, Jason's right, are kind of the same, but we just didn't want a kid who's already failing academically or at risk to be eligible, because we felt like they needed to be in school. So we just wanted to kind of put a little parameter, same as the once a month, because we didn't want this to get into 2 or 3 days a week, so we tried to put like I said, we wanted to box it in a little bit, so.
Any questions from committee or others for Mr. Weber, Dr. Ellis? It's up here as information only, but are we not needing to approve some of these changes, or?
This is just for information at this point. We're seeking feedback from the board. If you have any particular thoughts, any concerns, anything for us to consider, if not, I'll continue to work with Dr. Ellis and staff and bring a final proposed version at a future meeting.
And I sent this copy, I believe, in your weekly calendar, so if you would peruse it just to see if you want to make any changes. But the option 1 and 2, we probably need to find out which one you'll hang with. So.
Is there any indication when Likewise wanted to start it actually?
The last conversation I had with Ms. Smith, I told her that the board was gonna be looking at a policy. And I told her just to hang tight, I don't think anything's really been done, you know.
And I would just clarify again that if the board approves this policy, it would be for any program.
Right.
Not just Likewise,
Right.
not just that particular.
But they still want
School
to start their program
district-wide.
before this school year's up.
I think they wanna at least know is the board
Trial
interested
run.
in having such a policy to start something.
And that's a good point to raise. One thing, to consider would be, an effective date, whether it's something that would be effective immediately versus at the beginning of next school year. If the board has any particular, views on that issue.
Yeah, I do think that they have a lot of things to do before all this happens, so I think this policy is the least it works. Sounds like there's a lot to get this organized.
There'd be a bit of implementation work
Yeah.
on the district side too, in terms of developing a standard form and communicating this out to principals and staff. So it is the kind of thing where I think it would make sense to think about an effective date.
All right, don't think we've got. Be sure to pack up and bring your questions or comments. Maybe next Monday we can revisit that a little bit, or at least moving forward, but if not, we'll go ahead to policy 2110, board member elections.
In 2110, you'll see there's no particular red lines here. This was just brought to our attention. This policy relates to board member elections, that it includes now outdated information as to the number of members on the board, the number of districts. So really, this is just an update to let you know that staff are, of course, aware of that. They've been in communication with the NCSBA. You have a policy service team who does your regular quarterly updates to see if they're planning on making any changes here in light of the demerger legislation. And if not, I'm happy to work with staff on revising this. It's not quite as simple as just changing it to 10, right? Because you don't have 10 single-member districts, you have 7. So one particular option could be to revise that first sentence to acknowledge there's 7 members with 7 single-member districts, and just to include a note as to the current membership of 10 that'll be in effect for another 2 years through 2026. But again, your staff, they're in contact with the NCSBA policy team to see if they're going to be making that part of their spring updates.
So you'll bring us that once there's some clarification around it.
That's correct.
Okay, questions on that and how that might look? Mr. Weber, thank you very much. I think that it concludes the items we have for policy. If there are any other questions or comments before we adjourn? Hearing none, I will adjourn policy committee for the committee meetings today.
Okay, we're down to Academic Services and Accountability Committee. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Mr. Bissett. I have a second.
I'll second it.
Dr. Washington, second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed likewise, motion carried. Summer Learning Opportunity Assessment Plan. Dr. Mudd.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Dr. Ellis has our summer opportunity remediation and testing plan that we've used in the past for approval tonight. This occurs at the end of the school year after the last student day. It's for students who have passed their course but were not proficient on the end of grade or end of course test that goes with that subject. And so the state, a couple years ago, allowed an option for an additional opportunity for the students to receive some targeted intervention on the areas where maybe they didn't show proficiency that they might need just a little bit of extra work on, and then an additional opportunity to take the assessment and pass that assessment. Students who are proficient on their second opportunity do count for the school's proficiency, for the school performance grade, and for the district for proficiency. So there is a benefit in addition to the student having passed, but then also for the districts and for the school, there's an incentive there as well. And so all you can see in the plan there, everything was presented. In the past, we have provided transportation for students that need transportation for that so that it's equitable for all students who would like to participate. We are a CEP district, so now everyone receives free and lunch, or no-cost lunch, excuse me, no-cost lunch. And so we would provide lunch and breakfast for those students on the days that they attended as well, per the plan. And so are there any questions regarding the plan? And again, that is an item that Dr. Ellis is.
I would entertain the motion to adopt the Summer Learning Opportunity Assessment Plan.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bissett,
I'll second.
Dr. Washington, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Overnight and out-of-state field trips. Mr. White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we have 4 that need approval, and all 4 do meet the district's requirements for overnight or out-of-state field trips.
Any questions to Mr. White about the field trips?
Is there just one kid going from Southern on the band competition?
It's a competition where whether they pass or not, can move forward, so it'd be one student.
Okay.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the overnight and out-of-state field trips. Motion by Mr. Bissett. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Washington, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Any other concerns for the Academic Services and Accountability Committee? Without any, I will adjourn this committee and Dr. Davis.
Good evening. I now call the Nash County Board of Education Student Support Services and Operations Committee meeting to order. It seems we have very little this evening, but I will ask for approval of the meeting minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Could we get a clarification on who is now on each committee?
It's
So
the
that
same
we'll-
committee as was before. For yours, Mr. Jenkins, Dr. Washington, Mr. Edwards.
Okay. Once again, I'll ask for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, and
Correction for the record, Mr. Chair, the student support services. I'm not on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
okay. Does anyone on the committee have any issues to bring as a matter of concern or importance? If not, I move that our meeting be adjourned.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Any more comments or concerns from committee meetings? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
That's too soon.
No, it's not. Record speed.
So moved.
I'm in Trump speed.
There you go.
Motion by Mr. Bissett. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Whitfield. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. This meeting is adjourned.